Mr. Kai, fearing revenge from the ghost, decided to make an offering and promised to take care of the remains of the bodies that had been exhumed. For the whole week, he sent the ashes to the pagoda, hoping that the spirits there would forgive him and his wife and children. After everything was settled, he returned home to see his wife rubbing her stomach. She seemed very happy. Miss Tam could feel the baby moving inside. Perhaps this was a good sign after months of living in fear and anxiety. Now, she could finally be at peace. In the last months of pregnancy, everything seemed to be going smoothly. But unfortunately, the baby was born prematurely because Miss Tam had spent more than half of her pregnancy living in fear and anxiety. This had a great impact on her delivery. A tiny baby was born before his time. The couple had to spend a lot of money to have the hospital monitor and take special care of him. With the hand no longer able to exert any strength, Mr. Kai struggled with his work. He had been a valued member of projects, but now he was unable to do anything big. He could only do odd jobs to make ends meet for his family. People said that the baby was difficult to raise because he was often sick and strangely aggressive. There were many times he bit his mother until she bled. Many people also speculated that the baby was Mr. Kai's nemesis. Since the baby was born, his business had gone downhill and his family's finances had suffered. Today, the baby was playing in the house. Mr. Kai had been drinking somewhere and was completely drunk. He pointed straight in his son's face and shouted,
"Who are you? You're not my son. Ever since you were born, I haven't been able to do anything."
Hearing those hurtful words, Miss Tam burst into tears. The baby sat there, staring at his father for a moment. His eyes turned angry. He screamed loudly, as if he understood what Mr. Kai was saying. Miss Tam was also shocked to see her son react like this for the first time. Mr. Kai was about to lose his temper and do something, but Miss Tam stopped him just in time. The boy just stared at his father calmly as he went crazy. Of course, Tam didn't forget to hug her son tightly and protect him. It was late at night now. Mr. Kai woke up to go to the bathroom. In a daze, he accidentally bumped into a toy car and slipped and fell. He hit his right ear on the floor and broke his arm again, in the same place he had broken it before. He was in pain and screamed in the night. Miss Tam woke up with a start and turned on the light to see him lying in the middle of the floor, holding his arm. Her son Nam was standing next to him with a wicked grin on his face. He pointed to the corner of the room and slowly moved his arm towards the shed, as if someone was controlling him. Miss Tam blocked her son's hand, completely distraught, and kept calling his name. The boy didn't answer, but he kept mumbling something unintelligible. Terrified, Miss Tam grabbed her son and ran out of the house to prevent him from looking into the shed anymore. After that day, Tam decided to clean up the warehouse. She worked hard all day to clean it up. She found the cradle that Mr. Kai had made hidden inside. At this time, Saints saw more faces on the table than before, and their emotions were twisted and painful. Tam took the remaining paint can in the warehouse and painted the entire table to cover up those strange faces. Then the little boy also grew up gradually. Every 10 days and a half month, he would talk to strangers in the house. Mr. Kai didn't even know about this. Time passed by, and the little boy could walk and talk clearly to the surprise of everyone. After that day, Tam decided to clean up the warehouse. She worked hard all day to clean it up. She found the cradle that Mr. Kai had made hidden inside. At this time, Saints saw more faces on the table than before, and their emotions were twisted and painful. Tam took the remaining paint can in the warehouse and painted the entire table to cover up those strange faces. Then the little boy also grew up gradually. Every 10 days and a half month, he would talk to strangers in the house. Mr. Kai didn't even know about this. Time passed by, and the little boy could walk and talk clearly to the surprise of everyone. Mrs. Tam noticed that her son was showing signs of puberty early, but instead of going outside to play with the other children, he would stay around the house and secretly make tea and drink it like an old man. That night, the moon was bright because it was the full moon, and Mr. Kai was getting drunk and falling asleep. Tam kept waking up and dozing off, dreaming. She saw a tall, dark figure standing there holding a hammer raised high in the air, as if it were about to hit something. She was so scared that she woke up and saw clearly that it was her son, who was also holding a hammer raised high in the air. Mrs. Tam screamed. Before she could finish her sentence, Nam stomped down hard, causing the blow to land on Mr. Kai's arm as he lay asleep on the sofa. Tam distinctly heard the sound of Mr. Kai's bones breaking. The pain was so excruciating that he writhed in agony, unable to utter a word.
Oh my God, Nam, what have you done?
Nam burst into tears, frantically pointing towards the table.
This man did it! Mom, this man did it!
He cried while clutching his head. His words and actions only heightened Tam's confusion. She embraced her husband and noticed that Mr. Kai's hand was almost crushed. It was impossible for a child to have inflicted such damage. Then, she heard a deep, booming laughter echoing through the room. Looking up, she saw her son sitting on a chair in a dark corner of the room, his eyes glowing brightly. A voice came from him.
Oh my God, what is that? Nam, you're scaring me.
I'm not your son.
The deep voice sent shivers down Tam's spine. Mr. Kwong also froze in fear. Tam now knew that someone was possessing her son's body. With a leisurely demeanor, he sat upright, his left hand stroking his chin like an old man stroking his beard. Mr. Kai was startled and in a panic. In fact, he hadn't accidentally fallen into the iron grinder before. He was standing nearby when he suddenly turned around and saw a dark figure with no face rush towards him, causing him to startle and fall into the iron grinder. Because Mr. Kai himself always lived with the mindset of not believing in ghosts, he didn't tell anyone about this. But now he truly believed in ghosts, so the couple knelt down and begged. Tam said,
"Oh, sir, I know my husband broke your grave, but we have already atoned for our sins and taken care of the afterlife for everyone in that grave. Please forgive my family."
Then, a soft, feminine laugh echoed through the room, sounding very scary. Tam immediately asked Mr. Kai if he had done anything else to offend the spirits besides desecrating their grave. Mr. Kai, still in a state of shock, recounted the events of that day. On the day, he had broken the large grave. He had stood over the grave and cursed and insulted the deceased. He had even used the restroom in their cemetery. Tam's heart turned cold as she listened. She couldn't understand why her husband would do such things in a cemetery. Suddenly, Nam let out a scream and collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Tam quickly picked up her son, and Mr. Kai sat there, stunned and afraid, unable to say anything more, just staring at his two arms that were now crushed and deformed. After that night, Tam and Mr. Kai went to investigate and found that there were large trees on top of the grave that had been there for hundreds of years. It is common for such large, old trees to be the abode of many ghosts. On the day the tree was cut down, Mr. Kai had a stomachache, and everyone was afraid. So he took the opportunity to light incense and ask for permission. Therefore, they were not blamed. But Mr. Kai did not care about this and was therefore followed, harassed, and cursed by the ghost to this day. The wooden cradle that Mr. Kai made was also made from the trunk of that tree. Those distorted faces were the ghosts that had lived in the tree, and perhaps Mr. Kai had finally learned to fear and believe in spiritual forces. Although life was difficult, Because his two hands were no longer intact, he always reminded himself not to mess with ghosts. No one knows if his two legs will be broken in the future. As for Nam, thanks to his mother's blessings, he was safe and sound, intelligent and bright. Everyone was happy for their family, and she no longer had to live according to her husband's atheist prejudice.